that we are having more and more EVs in our country, but charging may be an issue because it takes like half an hour, 1 hour to charge for one charge. Like a fossil fuel, petrol, diesel kind of vehicle, we go to the petrol pump. It takes like 2 minutes, 5 minutes to fill petrol or diesel. Whereas for electric vehicle, it takes like half an hour, 1 hour. So going ahead and become an issue and may prove to be a recent hinder. So charging infrastructure also is as relevant as having more and more EVs on the road. So what else we have here? Projects aimed at making infrastructure more resilient to impacts of climate change, as well as investments in support systems like charging stations. Then sustainable water and waste management. So this also is important, promoting water efficient irrigation systems. So every resource is kind of scarce. So irrigation during the monsoon season, like July, August, September, June also, we have monsoon, and that helps our agricultural activities. But as when monsoon is over, beyond September or beyond October, till the next monsoon, our agriculture is dependent on irrigation. And for irrigation, what is relevant? What is relevant is the water table, as in with over usage and less, in case we have less of monsoon, the water table comes down. So water being a scarce resource, that also has to be used in an efficient manner. So irrigation systems which are more water efficient, that is desirable. Then installation, operation of wastewater infrastructure, including transport, treatment, and disposal systems. So wastewater, if it can be treated and if can be reused, that also helps in better utilization of resources. So flood defense. So floods are you are aware, nuisance on our environment and our resources. Then pollution prevention and control. So climate change mitigation, environment protection, like projects targeting reduction of air emission, greenhouse gas control, soil remediation. So all these things ultimately help in waste prevention and greenification, if I may say that word, whatever the word is, greenification of the climate of the environment. As per the government, certain areas are not eligible, and you can see the headline here: excluded projects. So which are the projects which are not or specifically excluded from the ambit of this green thing? Projects involving new or existing extraction, production, and distribution of fossil fuels. Obviously, fossil fuels cannot be part of this thing, including improvements and upgrades. So even if you are improving or upgrading on fossil fuels, that will not be part of this thing. Nuclear power, I'm not sure why, but nuclear power is also not part of this green initiative from the government. Direct waste incineration. So incineration also creates, you burn something. So that also is kind of creating pollution. And obvious stuff like alcohol, weapons, tobacco, gaming. Renewable energy projects generating energy from biomass using feedstock originating from protected areas. So if it is a protected area, even if it is green, there may be a kind of misuse of resources. So that way the government has prohibited this using biomass from protected areas. So landfill and hydropower plants larger than so and so. So for some reason, very large hydro projects also are not part of this. Okay. That was about the government thing. Now shifting to the next thing, that is RBI. So Reserve Bank of India. So the structure is like this. As I said, for funding the fiscal deficit every year, the government issues government bonds or sovereign bonds. The merchant banker or the investment banker for managing the issuance of government bonds is the Reserve Bank of India. And Reserve Bank of India is also broadly part of the government machinery. So every month the RBI issues this bulletin. So I have taken this extract from the bulletin, which was issued on 20th of September. So it's a long text, but so just take the gist of this thing. So what the RBI said there. So long-term economic stability needs prioritization of sustainable growth and environmental preservation. So the Article 48A of Constitution. So RBI says from a financial sector perspective, we have taken steps for ensuring sustainability with recent initiatives of the Reserve Bank, like Sovereign Green Bond Framework, which is under the government aegis, and Framework for Acceptance of Green Deposits. So far we discussed green bonds. Now I'm also talking about green deposits. As in you go to a bank, you make a deposit. So there are green deposits also, apart from green bonds per se. So RBI, being the regulator of banks, there is a RBI Framework for Acceptance of Green Deposits. These frameworks are expected to play an important role in influencing green projects, incentivizing sustainable practices, and lowering societal costs of development. So today India is the fastest growing major economy in the world. We are developing, but then there are certain social costs also. So pollution, climate change is one of the social costs of this development. Like when we're doing fast urbanization without proper planning, the city is a frequent victim of floods and all that. So that is as an example of the social cost of development. Despite these, their benefits, green bond and green deposit frameworks face several challenges. So RBI is aware of that and RBI is communicating that. They include scalability. So basically, we'll see the numbers. We saw some numbers earlier. We'll see some more numbers going ahead. The extent is not much. So scalability is an issue, as the market for green bonds needs to expand significantly to attract larger issuances and diverse set of investors. Basically, to put it in simple language, as of now, the market for green bonds and green deposits is less. Not much of thing is there. Ensuring authenticity and impact of green projects financed through these frameworks requires robust monitoring and reporting mechanisms. Okay, so a lot of text. I'm moving to the next slide. Again, same source, the RBI bulletin released on 20th of September. So RBI says, drawing on the recent experience, sovereign green bonds can be used to finance or refinance green projects. So RBI, being the merchant banker to the government bond issuance program, is also part of the entire system. So sovereign green bonds could also provide a benchmark for the pricing of green bonds by private enterprise in order to attract globally mobile environment sustainability and ESG. So basically ESG funds. So there are green bond issuances by the private sector, by corporate sector also, may not be as much. So the green bonds, sovereign green bond can give the kind of framework or a benchmark, so to say, for the private sector to issue green bonds. The inclusion of the renewable energy sector up to a certain limit under the, so look at this, under the private sector lending. So for a bank, where can a bank lend? Of course, the bank can lend to anyone, depending on the risk assessment. But this RBI guidance which says so much percentage of the loans given by a bank should be to priority sector, like agriculture, like poor segment of society and all that. So renewable energy sector has been classified by RBI under this priority sector lending. So basically, RBI is incentivizing loans to this renewable energy so that we have more and more renewable energy projects. And this, the framework for acceptance of green deposits is expected to facilitate bank funding of green activities projects. So when a bank is taking green deposits, the money has to be earmarked for that particular project. And in conjunction, the RBI's draft disclosure framework on climate-related financial risks will work towards curtailing the misplacing of assets and misallocation of capital due to inadequate information. So, in which way, there may be an incentive towards profitability, and there may be a compromise on climate. That is what the RBI means to say. So far we discussed about green bonds, sovereign green bonds. I'm showing you some example. So how does sovereign bond issue happen? In the budget speech and the finance bill, the finance minister talks about a certain quantum, that rupees so much. As an example, rupees 16 lakh crore or rupees 14 lakh crore over the financial year would be issued by the government as sovereign bonds. And there's a calendar issued every half year. So towards the last week of March, there's a half-yearly calendar for borrowing from April to September. And towards the last week of September, there is another half-yearly calendar for government borrowing from October to March. So here you see on 27th March this year, 2024, there is this issuance of calendar. So dated means basically government securities. They call it dated securities. So basically government securities or government bonds or sovereign bonds. This was the calendar issued for April, September 24, the first 6 months of the year. So this is how it looks. Every week, the government will borrow so much, 30,000 crore, 30,000 crore is what they will borrow every week. Here you can see this thing in highlight. So the government says that, as an example, notifies the indicative calendar for issuance of government dated security, basically government bond dated securities, including sovereign green bonds for the first half of the financial year. Now you see, the government has not given any particular quantum that out of this total quantum of sovereign bond issuances, rupees so much or so much percentage will be issued to green, because again, there are certain issues like those projects, identification, actual issuances, the market buying or not buying those bonds. So the initiative is on, and the government says this borrowing calendar for the first half of the financial year includes sovereign green bonds. So how it works is like this. In a sovereign green bond primary issuance, the yield means basically the return you will get. The yield level is somewhat lower, like maybe say 3, 4, 5 basis point lower than a normal conventional government security. It is called a green premium. Premium in the sense there's a higher price and lower yield when anybody, could be a bank, could be an insurance company, anybody is investing in a sovereign green bond. So that is an issue. Why should somebody settle for a little lower yield, like say 3 basis or 5 basis point? So here we see the borrowing thing for the second half. So this was the borrowing calendar for the first half, issued in March this year for April, September. And here we're talking about the borrowing calendar now, that is from October 24 to March 25, second half of the financial year. So this is the government borrowing program. The overall sovereign bond issuance, rupees 6.6 lakh crore, is what the government will borrow in the second half of the financial year. So you can see the headlines. The market says, the media says that this borrowing program is in line with what the market thought as to the quantum which the government will borrow. The same thing I'm showing you different publications. So here you can see one publication, you can see the headline, which publication. Here you can see the other publication, which came after the announcement of the borrowing calendar for the second half of the financial year. So now you can see this this portion in the box. Of the projected borrowing, the government said it will raise 20,000 crore via sovereign green bonds in the second half. So as you can see, total this thing is 6.6 lakh crore. So out of total borrowing quantum of 6.6 lakh crore, 20,000 crore is obviously on the lower side. So the government also knows that there being a green premium what they call it, which means basically means that the yield is little lower than the yield on a conventional government bond, and the market may or may not have an appetite for that. That is why they're earmarking only rupees this much. And also in the first half, I don't have the figure offhand, but the quantum of money raised for sovereign green bond was on the lower side because of the issues we are discussing. Next point, you can see the screen, initiative taken by the RBI. So RBI governor says that, you can see the publication, it came in PTI 10th of August. Sovereign green bonds trading at IFSC to start in second half of FY25. So IFSC, the gift city, Ahmedabad gift city, it is IFSC. So in Ahmedabad gift city, IFSC, sovereign green bond trading will start. So a beginning has to be made somewhere. You can see the quantum here. The government has been raising funds through green bonds since FY23 and has raised a total of rupees 36,000 crore in the last 2 years. So basically on the lower side, 36,000 crore. So in the entire year, government issues like say 14 lakh crore, 16 lakh crore gross means before maturity of government bonds. And over 2 years, 36,000 crore is on the lower side. But yes, a beginning has to be made. So as the RBI governor says, we are in discussion with IFSC. It will be operationalized very soon, I think in the second half of the current financial year. So the government has been raising funds to green bonds and raised a total of 36,000 crore in the last 2 years. So far in the current financial year, that is FY25, 24-25, the government has raised only rupees 1697 crore out of the stipulated 12,000 crore scheduled to be raised in the first half ending in September through green bonds, as I did not find favorable bids. So they must have got the figure from somewhere. 12,000 crore expected to be borrowed through green, of which they issued only 1697 crore. Okay, now we come to private sector. So we initially covered the global scenario, then we discussed the government green framework, then we discussed RBI initiative as in green bonds and green deposits. And then we saw the extent of sovereign green bond issuances. So now here we come to the corporate sector, not just corporate, but so in the corporate bond market, PSU also comes under corporate. So a bond issued by a government as such. Government as such means the central government or the state government as such is a government bond. Even a PSU, even a 100% government-owned PSU, those bonds are part of the corporate bond segment. So you can see here, L&T Infra, of course, is a private sector company. IRIDA is a government company, a PSU company, but that also is part of the corporate bond segment. So you can see municipalities like Ghaziabad, Nagar Nigam, like Indore Municipal Corporation, Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation. So municipality corporation bonds also will not exactly, but broadly kind of come under the corporate bond segment. So some of the examples that in the corporate segment also, there have been a certain limited extent of green bond issuances. So how much and what is the rate, you can see here on screen. So this company called Priapus Infra, Priapus Infra, they issued in 21. They raised only rupees 16 crore. Their coupon means interest rate was 6.49%. This company Solar, Ratan India, they raised 227 crore. Their coupon rate was so much. Malwa Solar, basically solar power is part of green. They raised 197 crore at the coupon rate of so much. So all these companies are there, like Citra Real Estate, ASIC, Sepset, Avada Solar, and a lot of other companies are. So then Indore Muni Corporation, Mindspace Business Park. So Mindspace, you are aware, they are real estate this thing, and they must be adopting some green standards, which is why they are eligible for this thing. And the Muni corporations like Ahmedabad, Vadodara, they have issued like, so Mindspace issued 550 crore of green bonds. Ahmedabad, Vadodara, they have issued 200 crore, 100 crore, and their yield levels are higher. You can see here. Here the yield levels are 6.49%, and here we see levels of like 8.25, 7.9% kind of. Total amount raised, you can see 6,000 crore. So in the overall picture, 6,000 crore is not as big. So nationally determined contribution goals for 2030. The investment required in manufacturing capacity for solar energy, electrolyzers, wind and batteries, and green hydrogen is estimated rupees so much. So what has been the quantum of green bond issuances? So this is USD billion. So approximately 1 billion USD is like 8,000 or 8,500 crore. So like in 23, if you say 5 billion as an example. So 5 billion multiplied by 8,500 crore is the rupees crore. That gives you an idea. So approximately 5 billion into 8,500 crore. 24 even lower. And you can see the bifurcation here. The blue component is the government of India. The green component is private, and the yellow-brown color is the PSU and Muni segment. So in these 2 years, the government has been the major issuer, and then some extent of private and Muni participation as well in this issuance. Now coming to green deposits. So in April 23, RBI issued this guideline, this framework for acceptance of green deposits. Climate change has been recognized as one of the most critical challenges, like we discussed. Deposits constitute a major source for mobilizing of funds by the regulated entities, basically banks. So any entity regulated by RBI is a regulated entity. Mostly banks and NBFCs also are regulated by RBI. So banks and NBFCs, let's say banks only, are regulated by the RBI. So it is seen that some REs are already offering green deposits for financing green activities and projects. Taking this forward and with a view to fostering and developing green finance ecosystem in the country, it has been decided to put in place the enclosed framework for acceptance of green deposits, applicable from 1st June 23. So some details are there, like purpose, rationale, why they are doing it, to encourage banks to offer green deposits to customers, to protect the interest of the depositors, applicable to whom? Scheduled commercial banks, including small finance bank, but not regional rural banks and not local area banks, and applicable to NBFCs as well. NBFCs also can offer this green deposits. So basically, out of the approximately 9,000 NBFCs in the country, only a few, less than 200, are eligible for accepting deposits. So not any NBFC can raise public deposits. They have to be specifically allowed by the RBI to raise deposits, and only a few, less than 200, are eligible for issuing deposits. So those NBFCs who are eligible, like all deposit-taking NBFCs, if they want, they can issue green deposits under this framework. There has to be a comprehensive board-approved policy for accepting green deposits. There has to be a board-approved financing framework, what they will do, where they will use the proceeds, the project evaluation, selection of the regulated entity, what they are doing, allocation of proceeds of green deposits and its reporting, all this thing. And third-party verification, assurance, and impact assessment that is relevant. You have to do as per the RBI framework for green deposits. So again, like we saw earlier in the government framework, which are the bonds eligible? Renewable energy like solar, wind, biomass, energy efficiency like energy efficient and energy saving systems installations, lighting improvement like LED. So if you're replacing a more energy guzzling equipment with an LED and consuming less energy, that also is kind of contributing to the environment. Then clean transportation, clean fuel like electric vehicles, climate change adaptation like projects aimed at making infrastructure sustainable, water and waste, all these are eligible as part of this green deposit. So I'm almost done with the presentation, last 2-3 slides. Here I'm showing you one example of a green deposit offered by a bank. So you can see here SBI being the marquee bank, marquee PSU bank, SBI Green Rupee Term Deposit. You can see the terms here. Eligible customers, resident, non-resident, non-individual and NRI customers, amount of deposit, minimum 1,000, maximum no limit. Eligible products, you can see term and special term deposits. Mature withdrawal as per normal time deposits. Overdraft basically like a normal deposit only that the proceeds will be used as per this. As per the RBI guideline of April 23, applicable from June 23, for framework for acceptance of green deposits. So the rates in green deposits are marginally lower than the rates in a normal deposit. You can see there's no exact comparison. I'm giving you some idea. So from the SBI website, I have taken these rates. So 1111 days, so basically approximately 3 years. For approximately 3 years, the rate offered is 6.65 to general public, and for 1777 to longer tenures, SBI is offering these kind of rates. Whereas for the normal deposits, SBI offers the higher rate. So how much higher? I'm giving you some idea here. General public, you can see here. So here, starting with like approximately 3 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever the tenure is. So here we see 2 to less than 3 is 7%, 3 to 5 is 6.75. So here we have a number of like 687, 675, 6 for normal deposits. And for green deposits, we have numbers like 665, 640. So the rates are somewhat lower. So basically, it's like telling people that if you are socially conscious, environmentally conscious, you have to contribute. You have to contribute in the sense you have to settle for a somewhat lower return by taking a green deposit than a normal deposit. So that's about the PPT. I will now minimize the PPT, and then I will go to the Q&A. Yes, please. So I've opened the Q&A on the screen. Okay, what is greenium? Something called green premium. As an example, the government is issuing a sovereign green bond. As an example, it's a 10-year maturity. As on that date, the yield on the normal 10-year maturity government bond is 7%. And in the primary auction, the yield on the sovereign green bond of 10-year maturity is say 6.96% or 6.95%, somewhat lower. So in a way, you are taking a sacrifice, you are accepting a somewhat lower yield. So in a bond, yield and price move inversely. So lower yield means higher price. So you are paying a higher price to buy that bond. So that is the premium. So green premium is greenium. So when and how participation of retail investors is a good question. So if you look at the corporate bond market in India or how corporate bonds are issued in India, 95%, 98%, forget green, any bond, 95, 98% of the issuances happen through private placements only. So same thing will be there for green bonds also. So while nowadays we do see retail, so public issuances are there, retail participation is there. In the overall picture, it is not as much. So yes, in a given public issuance of corporate bonds, if and when the issuer thinks fit, the issuer can offer a certain segment of green also. So difficult to say when it will happen, but yes, a beginning has to be made somewhere. How can a retail investor invest directly in these bonds? Okay, so I will give you a broad answer. how can a retail investor invest in a government security? So it was difficult earlier. Nowadays, for a retail person to invest in a government security, nowadays easier. There is something called RBI RDG, as in Retail Direct Guild. You can go to the site, just do a simple Google, RBI Retail Direct. You go to the website, you open an account there, and link your bank account and all those things. And through this system, RBI RDG, you can participate in government bonds, as in buy or sell government bonds. So if you want to buy a green government bond, sovereign green bond, you can do it. As in, you can place your requisition through the RBI system that I want to participate in a green sovereign green bond. That is the method. So you can get it through Google, RBI. Examples I showed you earlier, like the muni corporations or other infrastructure companies, they have issued those bonds. So those are audited, and they are the funds, the money has been raised for those eligible projects. What could be the moderating variables that will affect the behavior of investors when investing in a green bond? So it is like this. Whatever we have seen so far, be it a sovereign green bond or a green deposit, the yield level or the return level, as in the interest rate in a green deposit, is somewhat lower than the normal usual stuff. So as of now, the mindset has to be that you have to take a little bit of a sacrifice and settle for a little lower yield. However, the suggestion that from the government's point of view also, if the government really wants to incentivize participation from retail, they have to somewhere offer a similar yield level, as in a sovereign green bond with the same yield level as a normal usual sovereign bond, or a bank giving a same interest rate on a green deposit as a normal usual deposit. So that is where people will invest. So if I go into a bank, if I see the same rate of interest on a normal usual deposit and a green deposit, I can as well do a green deposit. So somewhere either the investor has to come forward by taking a sacrifice, or somewhere the government has to come forward. Another argument is tax incentive. So one argument is there that if the government gives tax incentive, then yes, people will come forward. But then and again, if you go by the way things are moving, the government is gradually taking away tax incentives for all these things. For example, insurance. You talk of conventional insurance, talk of ULIPs. Now there are limits for tax-free investments, like 5 lakh for conventional, 2.5 lakh for ULIP insurance. So basically, what I mean to say is that the government's view is you buy insurance because you require insurance, not because of tax incentive. So similarly, it is unlikely the government will give any tax incentive for green bonds. If they give, good. If they do not give, at least they can offer a same yield to incentivize people, retail, to come for this kind of deposits or bonds. Is there any tax benefit, any other financial benefit over regular bonds? No, that is the point. As of now, there is no tax benefit per se. So like there are say ELSS schemes, or insurance benefit is there, like I said, up to 5 lakh rupees per year for a conventional insurance, or 2.5 lakh rupees for ULIPs. So for green bonds, there is no tax incentive as of now. That is the issue. Is it possible that green bonds can have more growth if there are less environmental problems in the world? No, it is actually the other way around. All over the world, environmental problems are there, very much there. Fossil fuel, whatever the world is doing, wildlife situations, all these things are actually polluting the world. So problems will be there. So green bonds should gain more ground than what we saw earlier. Get funds from Western companies from their ESG funds. I can't tell you exactly, but I can give a broad guidance. Any company in India issuing bonds, and when you go abroad to raise resources, they will look at the sovereign credit rating of our country. So the rating of our country is only BBB minus. So when the government of India is issuing bonds in India, there is no credit rating, because the government of India is issuing bonds in India, no rating required. However, when you as a company from India, you go abroad to raise resources, they will look at your company as a country from India, which is rated BBB minus by those S&P and Moody's and Fitch and all those rating agencies. What it essentially means is that your cost of funding will be somewhat higher, because they will ask for the risk premium as well. So if you are okay with all that, you can get in touch with the merchant banker. The merchant banker can guide you how to raise resources from abroad, what could be the possible. So one is the sovereign rating, and then the rating of your company per se. So as per the given credit rating of your company, what could be the potential cost of money raising money? And then, as you are saying, Western companies from their ESG funds, the merchant banker can guide you. How are green bonds performing in terms of returns compared to traditional bonds? That is a function of the market move. As an example, if it's a sovereign bond, sovereign normal bond, and a sovereign green bond. When the bond was issued, since then, in the environment, interest rates have moved up, moved down. That are the bigger factors. So in the initial thing, like an example I said earlier, if it is a normal 10-year bond with a yield of 7% coupon, and a green bond with say 6.95% coupon, time of issuance. But as time flows, and as time flows in the market, things change, interest rates go up, interest rates come down, RBI hikes rates, RBI cuts rates. That is a bigger factor depending on the time of issuance and when you're looking at it. So the green thing, 5 basis point here and there doesn't make as much of a difference. So the tenure, the duration, market movement, these are the bigger variables to gauge the return from sovereign green bonds than normal usual sovereign bonds. Best, so there is no difficult to say best green bond per se. Broadly, I can tell you sovereign bonds because in the bond space, it is said that uh, sovereign bond is safest because it's the government. The government cannot default, so there is no credit risk in a sovereign bond, any bond, sovereign normal bond or green bond. And if you hold till maturity, then there is no market risk also because if you're buying, let's say 1 year or 5 year, 10-year government security, government bond, the market yield, market price will move up and down in the interim. But as long as you are holding till maturity, you are getting the contracted return. So that way, from the safety point of view, sovereign green bonds are better than a private sector company or even a municipal. So it is people say municipalities are quasi-sovereign. It sounds good, quasi-sovereign. But if you look at the credit rating of mini corporations, they're not like very high. They're like single A or something of that sort. So that way, sovereign green bonds are better from the safety point of view. Risk to consider, no, that is same as any other bond. As an example, you are investing in a bond issued by a company. The rating of the company is AAA or triple B or single A or double A. That is the criteria you have to look at it any which way. So be it a normal bond or be it a green bond, ultimately the issuer is the issuer. If it is a company rated AAA, it is AAA. If it is triple B, it is triple B. So that risk factor will always remain, be it normal bond or be it a green bond. Okay, so is there? But yes, we've got quite a few interesting questions. So in the context of this environment, pollution, and how the world is moving, and all those things. So while the Western countries like USA and all, they give can to us, to India. In a way, countries like USA, China, they create so much of pollution. And we, India, for whatever level of naturalization we have, we don't create as much of pollution. And yes, we are moving forward towards green electric vehicle and those directions. Uh, is it true that green bonds might not always provide liquidity? No, that's a generic issue. If you look at the corporate bond market in India, in the secondary market, liquidity is not as high. So what is high liquidity? As an example, a large cap equity stock is liquid. You can buy, sell anytime. If you compare with that, the corporate bond market is not as liquid, be it a green corporate bond or a normal usual corporate bond. That issue will always remain till we see more developments. Uh, with this interest rate in sovereign green bond and what is tax? Tax is normal. So government securities are taxable. There is no TDS, but government securities are taxable, either the regular or green, whatever. Taxation is there any which way. There's no tax incentive as of now for investing in sovereign green bonds. Yeah. So is there any more query? So if there are no more queries, yeah.
Yeah, so I was just seeing there are a few questions in the chat box also.
Okay.
If you want, you can take up a couple of them.
Okay.
Maybe if time permits for you, then we can go on for 5 more minutes and then we can close after that. If you want to take up a couple of questions from there.
Okay. So I'm just going through the chat box. There are generic comments. Okay, one question is how is green bonds are important for sustainable development goals in business? So any business, any manufacturing activity you do, or even if you're not manufacturing, you are working in a building. So you are consuming energy any which way, and any which way, all of us are contributing to pollution. So if a company wants to promote or contribute towards the green cause, the company has to raise money, raise resources, and this is one of the ways of raising money, raising resources. So government sovereign green bond, third party, I don't know the name, but yes, in the government they must have done the audit for their usage. Any interest differential in green bonds? Yes. So at least in case of sovereign green bonds, like we discussed earlier, that green premium or greenium as it is called, 3, 4, 5 basis point differential is there. Sovereign green bonds offer like 3, 4, 5 basis point lower yield than normal usual this thing. Now, what I'm saying lower yield is time of issuance. Afterward, your return depends on how the market is moving. Market has interest rates going up, RBI rate high, IBI rate cuts. These are bigger stuff. Okay, somebody said there are players like Bureau Veritas who does this investigation. Okay. Can any rating agency verify the legitimacy of green bonds? I'm not sure, but my common sense tells me no, because a rating agency like CRISIL, LICRA, CARE, rating agencies, they give their opinion on the repayment ability of the company. For the usage like green or non-green, I'm not sure whether rating agency can give. So my immediate reaction is no, unlikely. Tangible benefit. What are the returns? Any difference from standard bond? Yes, like we just discussed. Returns, at least from the time of issuance, time of investing, is somewhat lower than other normal bonds. So like someone said, then what will really create an interest in that is the whole issue. Either we're conscious or, like I said, suggestion that the government can think of offering the same return, the same yield as normal bonds. So that will incentivize people. If not tax efficiency, at least same extent of return. Tax implication, no, there is no tax efficiency as of now. What make green bond attractive to institutions? So institutional investors, they have to talk about those corporate social responsibility, what they have done for the environment, all those things they have to talk about in the annual report and in their presentation. So they have a certain responsibility. So even for a somewhat lower yield, corporates, institutions, they have to, like, all big corporates, institutions, they do something for societies, for environment. It's part of that CSR, corporate social responsibility. Listed SMEs, again, it is like raising any other bonds. So given the credit rating of the company, the merchant banker will guide you what will be the cost, either normal bond or green bonds. How to buy them via brokerage? So if you are buying either sovereign bonds or corporate bonds through a broker, by the way, brokerages are mostly in equities. So there are certain bond-oriented brokerage houses. You can work with them, either government or corporate. You can ask them to, in case there's liquidity, in case there's any seller, you can request them to show you those bonds. How do green bonds mitigate the risk of greenwashing? Through audit. So there's an audit, and they have to go through the process, and not some company claiming something. As an example, I remember one ad by one one well-known foreign car manufacturing company. They say, while manufacturing this car, we saved so much of water. I don't know where that comes from, who audits that, and on what basis they are saying this thing. If the same company is issuing green bonds, they have to go through the process as to what is the process, why they are raising money. Otherwise, they can simply put an ad saying that we saved so much of water while manufacturing this car. So interest rate on sovereign green bond depends. Time of issuance is marginally lower. Then it's in the secondary market, it's a function of how the interest rates are moving. So right now we're looking at RBI rate cuts, and interest rates have eased. Yield levels have eased any which way. CPS eligible for investment in green bonds for higher returns? No, I doubt. I've not seen any green bonds giving return, at least initial this thing, giving returns higher than the normal bonds of the same issuer. Someone says bank gave interest 8.5 with insurance up to 5 lakhs. So, is there any reason to invest in green bond? If you are socially conscious, if you want to contribute and settle for a lower interest rate, otherwise you go for the normal usual bond. Senior citizen liable to tax when investing in green bonds? Yes, as long as there is no tax benefit per se, taxation is same. Rating, so my sense is the rating agencies like CRISIL, ICRA, they'll broadly go by their assessment on the repayment ability of the company. End use is relevant, but repayment ability is what their concern is, and that is what the rating agency will go by. So I think that's about it in the questions. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Going by the response that we are getting on the chat box, I can say it was a very successful session, and people are already putting in their thanks to you. And I think from FICCI is also in order. So as we conclude today's webinar, I would like to thank our esteemed speaker, Mr. Sen, for sharing his insights on this evolving subject, and more importantly, for painstakingly answering all the questions that were raised. A special thank you to Mr. Kunj Bansal, though he's not been able to join us today. He's GM NISM for this collaboration. And of course, a big thanks to Amir for your support throughout for today's program. Last but not the least, I would like to thank all our participants who have joined us today. Your thoughtful questions demonstrate the growing interest in this area, of course. And we hope that this session has given you insights and knowledge for making informed investment decisions in this field going ahead. So thank you once again to everyone.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think there are some requests to share the presentation with participants.
Okay.
So if that is okay with you.
Yeah.
If you.
I mail it to Amir.
Sure, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.